Okay, so you've got your little jar of starter. There might be a string on it, there might not be. You can use a string, a rubber band, a hair tie, anything that goes around this little container. This will be enough starter once it doubles in size for you to make one loaf of bread. If you want to make multiple loaves of bread or you want to have a lot more starter, go ahead and transfer this starter right now into a larger glass container with a loose lid. Doesn't have to be a tight lid. I also have these containers. So I have these containers and they're my glass ones and they just have a simple glass top on top. I keep them in a Tupperware to maintain and monitor their humidity and their temperature at all times. You don't have to do this, I just do it because I make bread a lot. But this is a really great container as well if you wanted to make multiple loaves at a time. They also have double-sized mason jars. I recommend a mason jar with a large top so that you can get in here and actually turn all of this flour and water. If it's a small little hole, it's like hard to get in there and get it all scraped down. So you have your mason jar. This is going to be enough. You need 100 grams of starter to make your bread. So this is a little over 100 grams once it's totally full. So just take the top off and don't throw it on the floor. But you're gonna take your top off. Well, unscrew it, take your top off, and then you're just gonna save this top, the little metal piece, and just take the screwed part and put that off to the side because you don't need that right now, unless you want to put it back in the fridge and not bake bread anymore. You don't need the screwed on top until you don't want to bake with him anymore. So you got your 50 to 100 grams inside of this little glass container. We're going to take our unbleached flour. We're going to put it on the food scale. We're going to zero it out. Okay. Go ahead and grab a spoon. We're going to add 50 grams of flour, of unbleached, all-purpose or bread flour, to your starter. It's about 2 heaping spoons. And we got 50. Okay. Then we are going to take 50 grams of your room temperature filtered water, zero out the scale. Okay. Now take her off of the scale and get your spatula, your silicone spatula, and just start pushing down and mixing in all of that water and flour into the actual starter that's down there. So eventually you're going to get to the point where you're not going to measure for starter anymore. You are going to do it by feel. Okay, so the first time you do it, you're going to measure. After that, you're not. So what you want is a hard consistency to explain, but I'm going to show you. If your starter is too dry, it will not rise. It won't have enough water and liquid to help it rise. If your starter is too wet, it will be too heavy to help it rise, okay? So it's kind of like this perfect mixture in between, and it's a bit, I wanna say it's like a melted marshmallow consistency. It's like tacky, you know, or taffy. It's like taffy. It's like kind of like you can see the strands when you pull it up and when you're mixing it. Okay, let's see if I can show it to you. Do you see the strands? Do you see how strandy it is? It's not thick. It's not running off like liquid, but you don't want it too dry and you don't want it too wet. So there's a happy little point in between. So once you get it to be that consistency, you're going to get that consistency on your first attempt at giving it 50 grams of both. After that, you're going to just give it enough flour and water for it to grow. So it's really gonna be based on feel, okay? So go ahead and scrape down the sides with your silicone spatula, kind of so that you can see through the glass, right? Because you wanna be able to see through this glass. You wanna make sure that it's growing, okay? Here's also really good pro tip here. All of this that's stuck on the spatula, you can scrape it into the jar. Anything that is left on here, scrape it off with a paper towel Also, my mother-in-law found this trick. If you take a little saran wrap and you scrape it off, it actually comes off easier. Paper towel is fine. Do not put it down the sink. Okay, this stuff is literally like concrete when it dries. You could probably build a house with it. So I always make sure I scrape it down, wipe it down with a paper towel, throw the paper towel out, and then I kind of, if there's just a little bit of residual on there, it honestly kind of clumps up and gets stuck in my sink drain, which is what I want it to do, so I can go ahead and throw it out. So go ahead and scrape off all that you can and make sure you don't put it down your drain. Now, if you want to make bread, you just did this, you're going to be able to make bread tomorrow, okay? This is going to need at least 12 hours, 6 to 12 hours to rise and make it ready for you to have bread, okay? So I personally like doing this the night before I go to sleep. So I do this in the evening and then I wake up to it and it's doubled in size, and I start my bread early in the morning. I make it, I'll mix it all together, and I'll do another video on that. Then I stretch and fold it for a few hours. Then I let it rise all by itself. And then there's a final stretch and fold and a rolling it into a ball, placing it into the bowl to rise for another few hours. Then it goes into the fridge to sleep overnight, and then it is woken the next day, and that is when you bake it, okay? So now that I've scraped down the sides, you can see through this glass. And you can see the rubber band is actually exactly where I need it. So place your string or your hair tie or your rubber band exactly where the tippy top of that starter is. Then you're going to take your simple little top, and you're just going to lay it on top, okay? Just like that, super light. You're going to place her somewhere like a warm spot in your kitchen. So not like by a drafty window or anything like that, but out of the way of drafts or out of the way of an air conditioning vent. And you're going to place her down on the counter, and you're going to get a cup, a small little cup, maybe the same size as her, any kitchen cup will do. And you're going to boil some water, and you're going to fill that little cup with boiled water. And you're going to place it next to her to give her a friend, okay? She's going to sleep overnight with her little warm cup of boiled water friend. And that boiling water is going to create humidity for this to grow, and it's also going to create warmth for her to feel snug and tight and ready to grow. In the morning, she should be doubled. So what we want to see is this much on top. You're going to see like air bubbles and all this stuff. So as soon as this doubles, she's ready to bake. If she hasn't doubled, we're going to feed her again, okay? But if you have to feed her again, you're gonna need to take some of this out to make space for her to rise again. So I would take out about half and then feed her again to that tacky consistency, okay? So she will normally rise on the first try, but these have a mind of their own, and they do whatever they want whenever they want. That is why I have 3 containers. I have 3 really big containers of these, because there is occasions where 1 wants to rise and 2 don't, or 2 want to rise and 1 doesn't, and I need to bake bread. So I always have 3, so I'm guaranteed to get some. So that is how you start your starter and your starting process to delicious